Hey everybody, welcome to Coffee with Joe for Thursday, October 29th, 2009. This is the 80th anniversary of the stock market crash of 1929, Joe.
Almost every bit of regulation that we put in place after in response to looking at the crash of 1929, Pete, has been undone. We talked a little bit last week about the fact that Paul Volcker, has come out and said we need to restore Glass-Steagall, so that would be some of those protections. So in that sense, we're right back to where we were before the 1929 crash. The GDP number came out for the third quarter. First of all, the GDP, when you think about what it measures, that is to say everything in the economy, all the bad stuff in the economy that we spend money on is measured in there. It's not a measure of either economic health or even really the real growth of the economy. Really, we have all the conditions ripe for what came after the crash, Pete, which is far more important, which is all the toll of human suffering that became known as both the recession and the Great Depression. And we have to remember, Pete, that they did not end until we were at war. And so you have to say to yourself, well, we're not going to go to war to bring the economy back. What are we going to do? And when you take a look at the monetary contribution, Pete, the monetary contribution, first the accelerated growing in the speculative boom, and then later on the contraction of the money supply. Okay, right now that's the interesting thing is that they're fighting the contraction in the money supply, because if the debt money system was to be taking its own natural, if you will, contraction phase, we would be so far in the tank it's ridiculous. But what they've done is they've added, trillions and trillions of dollars of new money to the economy, Pete. And really it's those trillions of dollars of new money in the economy that they're measuring when they take that GDP measure. So what we've done is we've increased the debt by trillions of dollars, and what are we doing? We're treading water. We're no better off for sure than we were then, except we have Social Security, we have Medicare, we have unemployment. We're better off in that way. But in terms of the things that were part of the economy, Pete, the things that went down, so to speak, we're not in control of them. And of course, money is at the root of that, Pete.
Well, Joe, I'd like to direct viewers' attention now to a couple of articles that I've written recently, posts on our website, economicstability.org, where I've just kind of realized in the last few weeks, Joe, that if we created something like $10 trillion measured as M3 in the money supply between 1960 and 2005. Our national debt right now stands at just shy of $12 trillion, okay? And the $10 trillion is only through 2005 because that's as far as they measured M3. So M3 has been going up, and if you look at shadow stats now, it says that M3 is getting pretty close to $15 trillion. The system that we have in place right now created $10 to $15 trillion in M3 in that time. And if that had been created debt-free by the government, spent into existence, we would have no national debt at all right now, Joe. Am I correct?
In fact, you're so correct that it's painful when we think about the predicament that we're in today. When we think about the fact that the government's ability to deliver services is being so severely restricted by the existence of that debt, and the fact of what is happening in the economy to, again, the states and the pension plans of the states all going down the tubes because of the existence of all of that debt. The whole thing, when you come right down to it, is a tragedy of the commons. It's the tragedy of our political, social, economic system, that we are the victims of the fact that we did not make the change in 1960 or whenever. But you know, Pete, the thing that kind of occurs to me, because I always think of it in terms of it's the people, be they acting as the government, be they acting as through their government, in terms of the government's base, you know, the borrowings of the government are what's placed in the accounts of the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay, those borrowings, and those are the borrowings that you just mentioned, wouldn't be there. Okay, that those really provide the foundation of the banking system, the entire banking system, Pete. So believe it or not, is a truism of this fractional reserve banking system, Pete, that it couldn't exist without our government debt. So it's one of those things where it's all tied together, Pete, okay? We couldn't have fractional reserve banking if we didn't have the seed money of the government debt. And yet that whole thing is what's causing this incredible growth in terms of the national debt. That's why the whole system has to be changed. That's why when Stevens Arlanga talks about the fact that we need every one of the components of the American Monetary and Financial Security Act, they all have to be in place in order for us to make a sound transition to debt-free money of government issue. But your point about the fact that can you imagine what a world we would be in today in 2009 if we didn't have any national debt? And we can get there, Pete, and we will get there, but we have to get there by combining it with the debt-free money system.
I don't see how we're ever going to get to an economy where people work during the productive years of their lives, save up. This is what we want our citizens to do. Become educated, go to work, be industrious, be productive members of society during their most productive years, get a little nest egg together so they can be taken care of in their less productive years, but the nest egg needs to be there. And everything in our society right now forces people to make other decisions. Spend the money now because it'll only be more expensive next year.
People don't think about the fact that one of the reasons that we're paying taxes is because the government is not creating the money. It is because the debt money system requires and needs, the debt money system itself needs for the government to borrow money. At some point, I feel, Pete, they're going to see how a lot of what they see is wrong with the government and their desire not to pay taxes, I'm just going to put it that way, is related back to the money system. And, you know, to me, when they do, I hope that that's, you know, that's their, you know, kind of awakening to the fact that, you know, things could be different. Things don't have to be that way. Again, I go back to the guys who in 1929, when the crash happened, Pete, remember, the '07 crash, Federal Reserve Act, the Fed comes into play. Why? To prevent inflation and deflation. Immediately fails, and then immediately fails big time in 29. And that group of economists who said, wait a minute, this ain't going to do it. This is not going to prevent deflation. In fact, when they looked at it, they said, this system will cause inflation, cause deflation, and cause a crash. So all I can say is there is another way to do it, and you know, people need to be paying attention to it, Pete.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for this week, Joe. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, Pete. Thanks.